Well, I feel like we're in the presence of royalty.
Oh,
Literally.
In a palace. In probably
Same.
the most beautiful space we've ever been in.
For sure. We are at Grace by Nia. We're here with Nia Grace. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for joining us on Setting the Bar. We are in awe. This place is absolutely gorgeous, and it's so reflective of your community and your culture. What inspired you in the design of this space?
Well, first I want to say welcome home, right?
Thank you. That's really sweet.
You do feel at home when you walk in.
Good.
It is
I
so.
agree.
Anybody who has not been here, it is mind blowing.
Yeah.
It is,
really
and it
is.
feels welcoming.
Good.
It
Well, then we did our
does.
job, right?
Yes.
So that to me is the biggest piece of inspiration is that you want to, I talk about when you walk into spaces, how you sometimes get that virtual hug and you feel like you're really cozy and you're at home and you can be at peace. And so, in a city that's kind of on the go, I used to live in New York as well, right? So cities can be so go, go, go. We're down here in the seaport. And you see everything that's bustling around you. But when you walk in here, you kind of get lost in it all. You're encouraged to take your time, slow it down, and just be in the moment. And that's what we wanted this space to feel like. And so while you're walking through, your eyes are drawn up. You see the palm fronds, you see the curtains, you see the
palms.
textures, you've got the colors, you've got the stage, right? But it just forces you to kind of pay attention, be in the moment, and get comfortable. And that's a lot of the inspiration. Then there were some throwbacks that we were looking at in terms of design, thinking about the eras of the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So the Cotton Club of Copacabana, right? And so those were glamorous as well. Yet everyone just was cool. And
Right.
So we wanted you to
Yes.
get that when you walked in. So
Right.
you feel cool?
I feel cooler than I've ever felt.
Well, there you
I
go.
feel like I am one of the cool kids in this space.
We're checking
Same.
off boxes here.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a good way to go into the weekend.
It is.
Feeling this cool.
It is.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
really do get that when you walk in, though. Your eyes do immediately go up at these beautiful gold palm fronds. And I mean, it really is spectacular. And you can feel that sense of like the 20s and the 30s vibe kind of when you walk in. So job well done.
Excellent.
I mean,
Thank you.
It really
Yeah.
is. Is Foxwoods built out yet? Can you tell us a little bit about, is it going to be Grace by Nia Foxwoods? We're
Yeah.
excited to hear.
So Foxwoods project we've been working on for a little bit. I would say we're just a few short months out from debuting that space. I say we actually built a better box. It's Grace by Nia Foxwoods. The place is super proportional. So you walk in, there's almost no bad view in the entire house.
Really?
So I like to call this one our boomerang shape. That one is our box. And, the stage is front and center. We've got a semi-private dining area as well so that it can be roped off as well as open to the entire room. We've got a custom bar that's 54 feet long. And so if you're a bar gal, it'll be
Yes.
great for you as well.
Yes.
The design, we're taking some of the same inspiration, so you'll see some of the maybe favorite elements from this space there as well.
Yeah.
With a couple of new surprises.
Okay,
So
okay.
We're super excited about it.
Yeah.
The team, we're self-producing to get it done as well. A lot of the work is coming from internally, our construction manager and their team. They're like knocking it out.
Are
And
they really?
They really are. And so I said, talking about May, and I was like, if you can get it done by April, that'd be great, right? So, but it's just a little pressure. Everybody needs a little bit of encouragement.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. Now, tell us like a little bit about I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts and your interviews that you've done, and your story is just really remarkable. And what Maddie and I were talking about this a lot yesterday, and I was saying how much I love that when people come into your space or when you see people on the street, I think you said you consider sort of everybody to be a friend that you haven't met yet. And so as sort of two of your new, I would say, Maddie, best friends?
Absolutely.
That you just met.
Yes.
I'd love to hear sort of just, and I know you've talked a lot about it, but it's so inspiring and you have such a remarkable journey. I hate asking sort of the open-ended questions, but it's going to obviously come better from you than it will from me. I'd love to hear more about your journey, about Boston, and about sort of what led you to where we are today at this beautiful amazing establishment.
Oh, well,
Can I
thanks.
hone in on that question a tiny bit? Because I
course
was
you
just
can.
I was going to ask the same one, and it made me think about how you're a girl from Roxbury.
Yep.
Hometown girl, but you said you spent some time in New York and now you're back and kind of taking over the city as a self-proclaimed experience architect, which I think is so cool. I am the same way in that I've tried to live other places, but I always come home.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear, the journey that brought you back to Boston.
Yeah. I like everyone's story for me, I think, is mostly a nonlinear path to where you end up. And, some people are directly on target. I am, semi-meticulous and thought I was going to be directly on target. And so I was in high school, like I said, from Roxbury. I had some things that influenced me growing up, and it was essentially the neighborhood and the people around me that influenced me, right? So I was raised primarily by a single mom. And she did everything that she could to make sure that I had opportunities afforded to me that would help me develop in a way that, would hopefully, impede success for me, right?
Right.
So, or develop success for me. And so, with that, though, I still was privy to things that were going on in the neighborhood at that time. This was the 80s and the 90s. And so one of the things that really influenced me was a friend of mine in high school who, really got kind of caught up in the law. And the biggest thing that I could see about it was a bit of injustice, is that, he was the oldest of 5 children. His mom had passed a year before. His dad is sitting here trying to figure out how to raise 5 children on his own, including a baby girl, that he had to essentially, I can't keep sight of all of them. This fifth, the oldest one, you got to figure it out, right? So while he tried to figure it out, he got caught up in the law. And I watched a public defender say, hey, listen, plead this case, just take these charges, and you'll be good. He wasn't good.
Right.
He couldn't finish high school with us. He ended up having a record before he was 18. And I said, well, that is not right? So I was going to school. I wanted to become an attorney. I wanted to come back to my neighborhood and essentially help everyone who had an instance like that, where somebody just didn't care enough to dig a little bit deeper to figure out the best way to get them a better solution, so that that would not be their trajectory, right? So I was really frustrated by that. At the same time, I was in child development, so I worked at a summer camp. And then at the same time, I got my first restaurant job, which was at the Purple Cactus, right? So I had all of these interests and talents, but I just knew that community service was really at my core.
Right.
So I went to school, and I thought I was going to go to law school. I studied criminology, African-American studies as a minor, but I got in campus events, right? And so I started producing comedy shows on a stage just like this, right?
Wow.
And
That's so
then
fun.
I'm doing concerts, and like some of my first concerts were ludicrous, and we did a
Wow.
Dave Chappelle show, right?
wow.
So I was like, well, this is great.
Yeah.
But I'm here for a reason, because I know I had to bring my talents back home. But before that, I went to New York, and I was on the other side of producing events. I started representing talent in New York. And so we had a massive catalog of Def Poetry's, like their poets, their catalog from HBO. We did different lecturers and dance groups, but something still said I got to come home, and I need to get back to the core, because I felt unfulfilled all the way.
Right.
So when I did get back, I spent about 10 years in nonprofit management, and I was actually able to work and fundraise and market for the same kind of human service programs that would have helped that friend, 10 years before that, right? So it was a very much full circle moment, which was
Right.
great for me. But my creative gene wasn't
Right.
tapped enough. Like I wasn't
Right.
feeding that piece enough. I had another job at some point working on the Spirit of Boston. And so where we sit today used to be one of the parking lots that I would come to in case I couldn't get one closer to
Yeah.
the boat.
Right.
Right. But
The mud lots.
exactly.
Yes.
Right.
I
Yeah.
hated this one. Right.
I mean,
wanted
these
the
were
one across the
terrible.
street.
Yeah, these were terrible.
So
They were the mud
funny.
lots for a reason. They were mud.
Absolutely. So, I would come and I think about all of that, right? So I did the nonprofit work. I thought about the 7 years I spent on the Spirit of Boston, and that was my larger first entry into full service restaurants. And what I loved about it and thinking about my college experience was that you come here, you get a show, you get the scenery,
Right.
you have the food and the great service. And I was like, well, that's a full experience. And I enjoyed that.
Right.
And as I was in my adult years, and you finally have got that career job, and that's what I was doing. I was like, well, where's my third space? Love the boat, but it wasn't it, right? Like I needed to know where I could go on a regular basis and be that regular, have that cheers moment. And I remember walking into my first restaurant, and I walked into that place. It's Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen in the South End, and I was like, wow. I love this place. Like, I didn't think that Boston had that, outside of what I was doing on the water. I wasn't sure that we actually had that, and let alone in a neighborhood. That was my neighborhood. That was my backyard.
Right.
And I was like, but it smelled familiar. It looked familiar. The sounds were great. It was my first Manhattan. It's my favorite cocktail, by the way.
Okay.
Right? It was special. Thanks, Max. That was his name.
Oh, I love that.
And so I was like, well, I love this place.
Yeah.
And I said, if I ever have a place, I want it to be just like this. Just not knowing that, we were speaking into existence what would happen 7 years later.
Wow.
That I would be able to, work for that business, understand that business integrally, from the inside out, and kind of work it like an owner, and then have the opportunity to come back as the owner. Right.
That's amazing.
And so, that's kind of my story on how I got back into restaurants on the ownership side of it,
Right.
and it's been a great journey. Right. And so I would say a couple of years ago, I met Ed Kane, right? And he is the principal of Big Night Entertainment Group. And right. Shout out to Big Night. And it was an interesting meeting, and we were sitting in the middle of the pandemic, and I literally was sitting in Daryl's. And if you're not familiar with that space, it's kind of like shotgun from the back of the bar to the entrance. It's a little narrow galleyway, and the restaurant is cleared out. They told us no tables, no chairs. They didn't want to have any sign of, you serving people indoors. And now I'm sitting here looking, and this might be month 3.
Wow.
And we
early
literally
days.
had no answers. And I'm sitting there looking down this, restaurant that's empty, and I'm tired, and I've got my apron on because, since we closed, I had to actually get into the kitchen and get back working. And so I'm down,
You're
right?
down.
Yeah.
And I get this call from an unknown number, which I typically don't answer, but I did. And I'm like, and he's like, hey, is this Nia Grace? And I'm like, it is. Who's this? And he's like, this is Ed Kane. I was like, okay. And so the biggest thing is we talk a little bit, and then I was like, wait a second, you're Ed Kane, right? And I tell him who he is now, but I had to tell him who he was from a different lens. I said, I saw a post that you wrote, Edward Kane. That's what I saw on Facebook. And you actually said everything that I felt. And I just didn't know that we could feel the same way. I had to lay off 96% of my staff, which only meant, and only is relative, but it only meant 46 people.
Right.
He had to lay off 96% of his staff, which meant 1,400 people,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
But he said in words everything I felt, and I was like, I know you. I didn't know this. I know you though. And I said, you're just like me, and I thank you for saying those things and actually like essentially seeing owners where people didn't know what we were going through in that moment, right? And people thought it might have been just okay that we had to make these pivots, and like we were hurting. Like
For sure.
It was pain, had nothing to do with economics at that point. It had everything to do with the people that we care about in this industry, right? It had to do with our customers who we understood. Like if I don't see Will every Wednesday for Chicken and Waffle Wednesday, I understand that is a piece that was missing from Will's life, right? So it was that, and I was like, wow. I was like, well, now we're friends, right? Like literally immediately, we're friends because it was something that we were all going through. But I just thought that the little guy or the little gal like me, my story was different than the big guy like Ed.
Right.
And in fact, we were sharing the exact same story, and so it was a fast and immediate friendship. We did Where's the Plan, right? They came in, they shot Where's the Plan, right? And I sat just like this, just tired. Then I'm not tired today though.
Yeah.
We got to
Oh,
do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Reminder
Right, a
of
little
the
different than
posture.
that.
Stretch it out,
Yeah.
ladies. Shoulders
That
back.
I was like,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
a thing, right? But I wanted to do it, and it was real. It was just like we needed some answers, and from then we've been best buddies.
That's
right?
so cool.
And it was one of those things where he was like, I see you in me. You know, I remember where you were. And again, he didn't have the same linear path. He thought he was going to be straight in politics and business. That was
So
it.
interesting.
And so, but he came back to this, and we have these great personalities, yet both of us, believe it or not, pretty introverted, pretty like want to be behind the scenes more, but you know, we've got the magnetic personalities, and that is the thing that we are turning on, so that we have new best friends every single time we open up our doors.
I love that. It makes me think of these Bob Dylan lyrics that say, we always felt the same way, we just saw it from a different point of view. And I think, you know, he is my favorite artist, and you know, he talks a lot about in his songs community and culture and coming together, and I think that's so cool. That is a really touching story, and I think people didn't realize what was going on for these small business owners, especially in the early days. Everybody just felt like, okay, one more week, maybe one more month. It all seemed like it was going to be solved quickly. So it's so cool to hear kind of a behind the scenes story, and then in the blink of an eye we're here.
Yeah, it was
so
just a blink.
Good reminder that we get through those tough times, but it is with a solid community, which is something we try to foster so much in our small business.
Yeah, and even going back, as I'm sure you do, whenever I see old emails from that time, and the post-traumatic stress comes back like very quickly, because it was such a heart-wrenching time for so many small businesses, including Workbar. It was thinking back to that. But what it did for us is it really made us sit down and focus on who we were and what our differentiators were. And we came out of it limping, but stronger in terms of our Workbar self-identity, and Workbar knowing that we were a home, a third place for people and a home for people. And what sort of I think about when I go into Workbar is, what is the experience that I get at Workbar? It's not the experience I get at home. It's not the experience that I would get at a corporate headquarters. It is our community manager front and center making eye contact with you when you walk in the door, saying, oh my gosh, did you get to the soccer game last night? Saying, you know, and making those connections, which I think is so important sort of post-pandemic in the world we live in today, where sort of loneliness is a huge is a huge factor in what people are going through right now. There's been so many different changes in how people experience just about everything post-pandemic than how they experienced it before. And Maddie and I were looking at, after we knew we were talking to you today, I opened up the Globe the other day, and there was an article by the chef and owner of some famous Cambridge restaurants, Will Gilson, was it? Puritan, and a really great... Geppetto. Yeah. And he had put out a post on Instagram that said, I don't know what sort of, and I'm paraphrasing this, but I don't know what diners want. I was, pre-pandemic, I would serve really great food. There would be a great atmosphere in my space, and there would be a line out the door. Now I feel like I need to have a viral Instagram post, a viral TikTok post. I need to have a viral menu item. I need to have a social media manager. I need to, create all these experiences. And I think in his view, and in a few people's views, it felt like maybe a distraction to what the restaurant was trying to achieve. This is a completely different model, because you've sort of reestablished the supper club and the experience driven and the friendliness, and you feel like you're home when you walk into the space. But what are your feelings about operating a business sort of post-pandemic, and the, overhead's more expensive, hospitality staff is harder to find? How has that sort of evolved in how you operate your business?
Well, first I think about, what the chef wanted to answer, which is, he doesn't understand what diners want. They want magic.
They want magic. So they do want magic.
They really do. And I actually said that, at the end of the year, they were talking about in the Globe, what kind of trends should we look forward to in 2024. And I said, essentially, you just have to give them more, right?
Always.
You walk into a restaurant, you thought it was just about, all right, great menu online. I walk in, good service, I eat, I go. That's great.
Right.
Not it. I think post-pandemic, people are more, they're more cautious of how they spend their time, right? And if I'm going to have a 3-hour night out or a 2-hour night out, I want it to be meaningful and impactful. And I actually want to check all those boxes. I do want to be able to share this post with a friend. I do want to have the ability to have this wow factor.
Right.
I want to be able to say I was able to drink, dine, dance, and maybe even, spark a love connection, whatever it is, right? So you have to be that person. You don't always have to be. But as a business owner, we're supposed to be solving problems. Essentially, that's also what we're supposed to do when we create our business plan. What problem are we solving, right? So I think that is kind of what we do here, where it's like, listen, how do you get it all in one night? How do we capture a moment all in one night? And you can start here for cocktails at the bar, right? And then you can come a little early, have that cocktail, check out the scene. Really, you've got some things to take in when you come in here.
You sure do.
And then you get that table, and then the show starts, and you've got something else to take in between, that cocktail that's flaming in front of you.
Yes.
So, you don't know where you want your camera to go. And then even dining and hanging out with us after the fact, it has to be about that full experience. And to me, I wanted it to make sure that it felt like what it would be if I went home for the holidays, right? We sometimes we rarely have those opportunities for those larger gatherings, right? And so every Sunday we used to have dinner, and it would be like our holiday gathering, and you knew that it was going to start here. We might play a couple of games, whatever. We're going to talk a little trash if we had to, right? But that is it. And then you're like, man, it was a full Sunday, and it got my week started off right. So whether you have to end your week that way or start your week that way, we kind of wanted you to be able to do that here, right? And so how do you then start to address some of the actual industry challenges with costs and particularly staff? We stand out. Period. Right. So any business, our business particularly, the entire Big Night Entertainment Group family, they stand out as people who are like, no, we prioritize quality. We prioritize, a staff that treats customers in a very special way. Everybody who walks through our doors is VIP, right? And so that makes a difference. You're always going to remember how you felt in a place. And so if it was a slow kitchen night, you know what, I could forgive it, because when I tell you they're on top of it and they make me feel so good, and I always feel so good in there, I'm all right with the slow kitchen night. Or you know what I mean? And they forgot my lime cup, but it's okay. I'll get another one and it'll be there, right? And not saying that those are the things that are necessarily happening, but more so we have to present ourselves in the same way that we're going to perform. And then we are attracted, that talent. Like, we're just automatically attracted. I'm not saying that we don't have some of the same struggles with, needing staff. But when we do get them, they are quality, right? And they're team members who believe in the brand and the mission, and that's what matters, right? And then we're good people to work with and for.
Right.
And so you want to be around, and you want to stick around here, so.
Now, do you worry at all as you go to Foxwoods? I know you have a lot of the same team working on the space out in Foxwoods, but something I worry about, because Workbar is a Boston regional company, and we've been thinking about expanding outside of Boston. Do you worry about scaling that vibe? Do you worry about being able to continue to translate being so great to work for and having this amazing experience, but outside of Boston?
Yeah, I think, in general, expansion is scary. Right. There are so many unknowns. And, all I did was, I just came under the bridge real quick to come down to the seaport, but I still had fear about, well, how well would I be accepted and this concept would be accepted here, especially since it was totally new. It might have came from a familiar operator, but it was still new in its naming and its location, and I wondered. And, that reception, the biggest thing, I think, I'll say this first and I'll talk about Foxwood, but I think the biggest reception and compliment are from Seaport residents who, immediately, I knew that my former audience were going to be my audience here as well. Yes. Right? But Seaport residents who are like, we needed something like this, right? And I just didn't know that. And needing and saying we like something is different. Right. When somebody says they needed it, I was like, well, here we are. Like, we just really provided you a lifeline. And so I say that to say Foxwoods is essentially the same thing. We studied the area. We understand that is something that is also probably a need there. Right. We we teased it out, and folks are excited about it, from the employees to the people who are also kind of governing that space out there. And so, the benefit for me in this partnership is that Big Night is already expanded out there.
Yes.
And so they're
Yes.
familiar with the market, right? And so
Right.
that is something that is a great, asset to have, because you've got eyes on the ground literally every day talking about, we need
Right.
do these tweaks, right?
Yes,
And so
yes.
that's what's really important about it. But it's a place that's reachable. I went to and
Yeah.
from Foxwoods just yesterday, and then something else, right? And in
Right.
a matter of moments, just so that we can keep our thumb on it and
Right.
keep an eye on it, and be able to be present. And because restaurants are living and breathing things, and
They
things
are.
change by
Right.
minute.
Right.
So
Yeah.
a little bit of fear, but absolutely happy to already have a flag planted there.
Yeah.
And we'll get our footing hopefully as quick as we did here.
Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that. I want to be taking notes to remind us as we think about expansion. Worcester will be our first foray outside of Greater Boston. And like you said, it's not that far. It doesn't feel like a huge change, but it is a different community. And I'm going to toot Sarah's horn a little bit here to say you operate in a very similar way in that you're in all of our locations because, just like Nia was saying, you want to keep your finger on the pulse. You want to know what's going on in the spaces, because even though we are a workplace, I almost put that in quotes, but we are actually a workplace. It is like the third place, like you said, and there really is such a nice community. And so making sure that we maintain that as we think about expansion, it's just an interesting way to look at it. And you don't necessarily think that way about restaurants or bars outside of the hometown dive bar feel. But this really, even not having any guests in the space, you can really sense that people get that here. And I can envision it in Foxwoods so well. And that's such an important part, is that everybody's involved, everybody's there, making sure it is what we say it's going to be.
Right. And it's the supper club concept where because when you say this is a restaurant and a bar, it almost feels like it's not.
Oh, well, yeah, I was talking about in general. It doesn't feel that way.
Right.
You're right.
It doesn't even feel like that's what this is. And when you say, there are so many, not so many, but there are quite a lot of beautiful restaurants in the Seaport District. They don't feel alive like this. And they don't, you don't get the same feeling when you walk into those spaces that you get when you're in this space. So hearing you say that the Seaport residents felt such a need for this type of establishment, when you said that, it clicked. I can completely see how they need an escape from and the Seaport's beautiful. Everything's brand new. It's shiny. It's sparkly, but it's not the same feeling when you walk into it that when you walk into a space like this that really does feel different. Yeah. And is it that supper club concept, do you think, that is sort of the different? You have the music, you have you sit at the bar and have the drink, like you said, and then you have dinner, and then you have so many different experiences all in one space.
Yeah. So supper club started in the Midwest, and it literally, was an opportunity for adults to escape.
Yeah.
So they were, and, not because we didn't like our lives back then, but more so as I'm working, 5 to 6 days a week. I have a family that we are rearing. And so at some point we want that night out. And so supper clubs literally you were there to be 4 to 5 hours. We wanted you to have that full experience, because parents and families were only getting that one night out, maybe once a month.
Right.
And so it was going to be a time, we got somebody watching their kids. We got this together, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a time. And I think that is what a lot of people are. We get so distracted. Phones distract us. Yep. We sit out and we've got a place that got windows, and now we're distracted by the people walking on the street and not the company that we're in. We needed to focus on these different connections, right? And so that is the time, that period of the supper club was just to slow down a little bit, have that concerted time to just be, and that is the live a little. And like I said, coming out of the pandemic, we were 90 minutes, we got to turn that table,
Right.
Don't know what's going to air, all of that. Forget all of that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And my partners might kill me on this part because we turn tables. That's the business that we're in.
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, turning a table a half hour later and that person walking away with an unforgettable experience and telling 20 more people to show up for the same one. I mean, I can't tell you how many countless times I'm getting notes literally from different pockets of the country saying, oh, and when you get to Boston, make sure you go here and make sure you have this, and maybe so-and-so will be performing that night. Like, it's just special. And so that is what we wanted to create here, something that was special. Everything is beautiful down here, and this is exceptionally beautiful.
Right, it is.
Say it myself.
No, you absolutely
you
can.
should.
It's
I do think that's such a cool thing about Boston, and we talk about this a lot at Workbar, like the bump and connect. Going to different spaces, different locations, and you run into people that you don't know. And then you find you have so much in common. And when we were chatting about coming in here, we even realized you are familiar with, I want to get this right, Boston While Black. And they won our 2022 Small Business Grant. Sarah heard you talking about it on one of your interviews. And we were like, everybody knows everybody in the city
It's
somehow.
so true.
And it's the coolest thing. And I love to hear that people from outside Boston are recognizing how special it is, because like you said, when you were talking about Ed, like he wasn't the type of person you would ever have thought yourself to be going into business with, but look what you guys have created. And we think about that so much in our spaces, and I think this city is so unique in its size and ability to kind of foster that.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, what you do is great in terms of hosting and creating that environment, right? And so I might be able to come there and do my solo project and things that I'm working on, but I love to kind of be in that atmosphere where it's like, can I bounce an idea off of you?
Exactly.
Can we collaborate? Can I just like run? And just sometimes you have to have that human connection and thought, right?
Right.
And you don't want to do it. Everyone is working from home, but that is why you're important, right? Because I don't want to work from home. I want to work from a space where everybody else is kind of working in it. It literally fuels that
the energy of it, right?
Absolutely.
It is. It's the magic of it. It's the energy of it. And yeah, I agree. And I think that that's what's interesting about any sort of company that operates in the hospitality world. And I have such an affinity for hospitality, and I'm in awe of people who work within this hospitality industry, because I do think that high level of service is such an important part of driving community and driving relationships and connections among people. Again, when we were researching this, I had looked, and you had been named one of Boston's 150 most influential Bostonians. And I think the line that they used to describe you was a hospitality luminary. And I was like, that is such a nice thing.
Wow.
Like somebody who just embodies what hospitality is. And also, luminary, you light up a room and you bring such a light to the world that you operate in. And I think it's so needed in the world we live in today.
I appreciate that. I gotta check that article
Yeah,
out.
I know. I saw it. Yes, I saw it.
You're
Maybe
like,
yesterday.
okay, experienced architect.
I know. I was like, these are like the nicest things I've ever heard.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's so funny. Well, it is interesting. I think like the normal trajectory that you typically hear in hospitality is like if you're going to become an executive chef or own a restaurant, it's like you start in a kitchen or even as a dishwasher. You hear those kind of like come up stories.
Yeah.
And I think too, that's what kind of like entertainment around the food industry is about, like those cooking competitions, and you really see people grinding it out that way. And that's kind of how you came up through Workbar. You started as a community manager and then worked your way up. And
well,
now
out of
you're
college, I
CEO.
also was going to be, I was a history major and thought I was going to law. I'd applied to law school. I went for a week and then was like, this is not for me, and dropped out and was like, check, not for me. Unsubscribed.
I'll pass on law school.
And then I became, a community manager at Regis. And then my career, like Maddie's sort of alluding to, it just, it was, I just kept sort of in the same industry, which doesn't feel like the same industry in all fairness. It's changed quite a bit
I'm sure.
in those years, but there was a blueprint for my career. I can look back and see exactly how I got to where I am today. You cannot do that with your career. No. Your career has, it's evolved so much. And what's so wonderful to think about is that you had like that one beacon of community service that you kept going back to and making sure, almost sort of having a discipline, like, oh, wow, it could be fun to stay in New York and be a producer. It could be fun to do this, but you had that one beacon saying, community service is what's in my heart. I need to sort of head back to Boston and make sure that I'm fulfilling sort of my purpose in life, is what it seems like when I listen to your story.
Yeah, I would say when I think we get down to the piece of experience architect, right, or the community portion of it, I was a person that both myself and my predecessors, like they didn't always feel like they belonged, right? And there weren't spaces that were created for them, right? And so I think what I inherently started to do was continue to create those spaces where everyone felt like they belonged, right? And it didn't actually matter in what I was doing. And so with the human service, if I got volunteers to come out to the programs to see the people who were there as humans, right? So that once they finished in those kind of programs, they would go back out into the world and felt like they belonged. And I got someone else to also change their perspective about how they termed somebody who might have been in one of these programs, then that was great. And that was change making for me. And then they're going to go out and continue to be in those spaces where it's like, no, I'm going to foster a different mind and I'm going to think about this differently, because I don't know, it could be hokey, but I really just think that this world is for everybody, right? And it should just be the greatest place, right?
Amen.
And we shouldn't have all these other things that kind of bring us down. And so I would do that in different pockets. And now I'm just focused in this space, right? I'm focused in hospitality, only because this is a choice. Like, people don't have to come out and dine. Like, and if you want, you can go ahead and sing in the shower and that'll be your entertainment, right? But you give us an opportunity to do that for you. And so I want to be that light. I've had a place where sometimes you're coming and it's after morning, but you're coming there with family to kind of be lifted up. You know, you are thinking about your next business deal and you go and you meet and now you strike that in the back corner. That's great. And I've had moments where you're having first dates here and then you're coming back to get engaged here.
Oh my gosh.
I love that.
Wow.
I've celebrated people's baby showers again after meeting at places, and now I've got the babies here for Easter.
So
and
cool.
it's those things, and I'm like, this is again building community and getting, one of the I think biggest prides that I have is other restaurateurs will come in here as well and say, I've never seen more diverse room in the city of Boston.
I love that.
Outside of saying I'm trying to bring everybody who's diverse in the room. And what I mean by that, we're talking beyond race. We're talking about ages. We're talking about people from different demographics or classes, and literally outside of the city and in. And they're like, we just have never seen all these different kind of people in a room. And to me, the connectivity of music and food is what does that.
Yeah.
And I think that is my goal, right? So for me, community is still at the core.
Right.
And it enlivens us. And I watch so many different connections that happen. And so this is my medium for
This is your medium.
I love that.
Yeah. And it is. Generationally, music and food is what brings people together.
Yeah.
I'm like moving in here.
I'm telling you.
I never want to leave.
You're going to pay
Same.
rent, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listen,
No, look.
times are tight.
Look, I'm telling you.
Times are tight. No.
You have any corner you want. But
I would. I come with 2 kids, 2 dogs.
Yeah, Maddie has some baggage.
oh, my God.
Don't we all? No, but it really is like you are. It doesn't sound like you're selling it. It is like you can tell that is just what this place is and what all your places are like. And that is just, I'm really so inspired that I don't even really know what to say right now.
Daryl's has been around since the 50s. Is that right?
1957.
1957.
Yep.
And you became owner in 2018. Is that right?
2018,
Yeah. And it's still winning awards.
Yep.
Like it just won. I was reading in Boston Magazine that it had won an award as recently as like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
so
one of the best
you're
restaurants.
like keeping the vibe. You're after all of these years, it's still, which is pretty unheard of in the restaurant industry, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's a personal touch.
Yes.
I always say, and with an icon like Daryl's, 1957 is when it started. 3 owners, me being the third one, and the last owner having it for 25 years.
Wow.
Right, and so it's one of those things where you've got to figure out, you've got to change with the time, obviously, but I had a friend who said to me, never forget the basics. You know what I mean? And so if you always remember to do the basics, then it's going to, kind of essentially survive for you in a good way. And that is, what I thought about. And so whether it was just the basics in the cooking and the preparation and then how we greet you and then everybody, if you knew Bob, the chef, I believe his thing was, God bless you, baby. Right? Like that's how he would. And that's when everyone's like, oh, you used to say that all the time. Right?
I love
and
that.
so I don't have any coot moniker like that, but I just happen to know almost every face and name that has ever walked through the door. And that was my touch.
That's your thing.
Where it's like, I always want to know what you're here for. I want to know that the Powells are here to celebrate their anniversary. They were just here last week, but they always like table number 4 when they come in. And he's always going to get that barbecue chicken or that blackened catfish because that's what his meal is, right? And that is special. Like I said, Will, Chicken and Waffle Wednesdays. He wants his dirty
So
Denise,
funny.
and he needs Denise to make it. Like that is something that is special. And so likely, we have the same thing that when you come into Grace, as a person who likes seat number 1 here at the bar, at that drink rail. That's what he likes. We know what he wants when he gets started. And those are those special moments. So even from a small place to a big place, if we can continue to do that, you're going to keep that magic
That's
alive.
the vibe. But that's scaling the vibe. That is absolutely scaling magic, which is not easy at all.
Listen.
Yeah.
I got a couple more hat tricks. So.
Yeah,
I know.
it sounds
we
like it.
cannot wait to see what comes next.
Okay, so what are your other favorite restaurants in Boston?
Other favorite restaurants in Boston, Mita is one of my favorites.
Okay, yeah.
I love what Douglas is doing. He's a neighbor of mine,
Is he?
literally in the South End.
Okay.
that's
He's
cool.
around the corner from us. He's got other locations. I know this might sound like a plant, but Empire is one of my favorite restaurants.
Yeah.
Entertainment group.
Yeah.
Chef Jim Lamb, tell him what up.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you see him. Tell him I said what up.
We love Empire too. We talk about Empire. So, and that's been a staple in the Seaport for a long time too.
Yeah. One of my, my quick service I order every other week. I was telling a friend that this week is a Fasika Ethiopian cafe in Roxbury. I get the vegetarian plate, 3 different lentils, the cabbage, the greens. It comes with the injera, and then I get the spicy beef, which is the cafe special. But they know my order. They're like, "Oh, you've ordered this 100 times." Exactly the same
got
way
this.
every single time.
Yeah.
Uber Eats, get them.
Okay. I love this.
Yeah, we're gonna have to try
Yeah.
That sounds so good.
It really does.
Wow.
Yeah, that
Very
sounds
What location
awesome.
is that closest to?
Oh, Roxbury.
Yeah,
Where,
Roxbury.
I know. So
Oh.
which I guess.
Which Workbar
downtown.
location?
Yeah, I'm trying to think we have to order
Maddie,
that for lunch.
it's like,
is
can
what
we
I'm
get it for
saying.
lunch today? Should
Yeah.
we go to Workbar Back Bay?
You can.
Yeah, I'm gonna
it
do
will
that.
absolutely go.
I am definitely
Usually
going to do
delivered
that.
under 30 minutes too, by the way.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. New place to try.
Yeah,
New place to
absolutely.
try.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing. I had so many questions that you just answered in your storytelling. You're actually an incredible storyteller.
appreciate
You
that.
are.
Thank
This
you.
was
Yeah.
so lovely. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes.
very much.
And we will be here tonight, I think.
Yes. Got to get a babysitter, but
I
I'm
hope
coming
so.
down.
No dogs, but come.
Yeah,
Listen.
no dogs.
I will leave
the dogs at home.
I will leave the dogs and the kids at home. I promise. This is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
this
you
is
both.
lovely.
This is
Thank
fun.
you.
And when you come tonight, just make sure you have your song ready because we're going to call you up.
Okay. I got to get over
Now
this
I'm
cold
like a little
and then I'm really
nervous.
doing it.
Okay.
Sarah's like, wait, is she
I'm like,
serious?
wait a second.
Yeah.
She was like, this is real?
Wait, I mean, I will do that.
That would be very funny. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, we're gonna like walk into Quincy. She's in the podcast room trying to just. Woo. Yeah.
Look, okay, I may have missed my calling. All
Listen.
right, thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks.
you.
We'll see you soon for sure.